Welcome to the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast. I am your host, Chris Kirkwood / screen name Kirkdiese. I'm here with my two boys, Brett Hartfield, KillaB 2482, and the one, the only Zumba instructor, entrepreneur, this season's Yahoo $1 Million Baller winner, John Surabian, JSURab. How's it going, fellas? We're back for another week of the pod.
Doing well, man. JSU.
Yeah, sorry. I just had to kind of go in right now. My girlfriend was very worried about me. She bought me these glasses for my eyes because all I've been doing is sitting in front of the computer after last week's debacle of lineups. I'm sure you guys have some killer stories about last week because I know I didn't have any Nick Chubb or even Godwin. I didn't have anyone that went off. So I'm sitting here right now. My eyes feel like they're on fire, honestly. So that's why I got these cool shades on right now. So you guys can all poke fun at me.
You look damn sexy.
Thank you.
Your girl knows what she's doing.
Yeah. So I'm wearing them. All right.
How badly did you guys get beat with Gallman Disley chalk coming through? Like that tanks me. Like I was
had nothing to Gallman did not tank me. If you guys listened to my take on the show last week, I thought he was good chalk and I was going to be a higher than the field in GPP.
No, yeah, but I remember that. You did say that. You were all in. You said you were all in.
And it came no, I actually said I was all in on carry on, but that was dumb. But I didn't even end up there. All right. Yeah, no, it was a rough week for me. It was really stupid. So here's I'll give you mine quickly, my little spiel. I had way too many pieces everywhere. So, I used to focus on Yahoo, used to do my thing. I used to crush. Now I'm like mass entering DK. I'm playing cash on DK. I'm playing Yahoo. So last week was a debacle for me. It wasn't great because I didn't have Godwin, who has killed me. Even though he's my favorite player, he has killed me more than anyone this season because I was all in on him and Jameis week 1. Then the week 3 was it when he went absolute, or when he did nothing and Evans went nuclear. I was all in on him instead of Evans, and then I just didn't have any really last week. And but the thing that really cost me was on Yahoo. I ended up making a GBP line and a cash line, and I had them both going to be the same, but I wanted to keep them separated. So I changed one player, Robert Woods and DK Metcalf. Were interchangeable price wise. And so I had Metcalf sitting there in my cash lineup, and I was supposed to go in and change it if I didn't like someone better or I didn't feel like I needed to change. And I started making 4 o'clock lineups, and I just totally forgot about it. And I sat there like a moron with DK Metcalf on Yahoo, who was overpriced to begin with on Yahoo in cash, which just annihilated me. So stupid. So I made a lot of mistakes that way, but I'm ready to. I feel so good about this week.
Gotta learn from mistakes, Kirkwood.
I will say DK Metcalf did drop a touchdown and had like 3 or 4 end zone looks, but that's
but he wasn't beating Robert Woods, number 1 on the buy low air yards model or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, it helps when your quarterback drops back 65 times. That was, such a quantity.
All right, let's get off this last week's slate. I don't want to hear any more about it. It was a rough one for all of us. Let's put it that way.
All right, so we're taping the pod a day early, so our takes are going to be a little fresher, I guess you say. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. We'll find out. But this week is going to be interesting. I actually really like it. I like it for GPPs because we don't have Mahomes on the slate, right? We got 12 games. We don't have any monster totals. Like we're kind of forcing the monster total games, which is the Atlanta Houston, which would be a good game, and it would be like the sneaky game on like a normal week. Right now it's all of a sudden the game, and then we've got the Bengals and Cardinals, which I actually like, and we'll get into this, but like it's scary, right? Like these teams are both atrocious, have the 2 worst offensive, like just horrendous offensive lines. But they do have really bad defenses, and they both have high paces. So we'll get into that. And there's also some injury concerns or people are out on each team, so that we should have a more condensed target tree. But we're getting to the point where some of these players are maybe just bad. Like I don't know if any of you guys went down with the Trey Quinn or Paul Richardson last week, But other than that, this slate is really wide open. You got, and I guess we would normally be really excited for a Bucks Saints game in New Orleans in the Dome, but Teddy Bridgewater this looks like the most anemic offense I've ever seen. Just atrocious. They won 12-0 on just field goals last week in the Dome. So then there's so many games that just look gross. So for GPPs, I think this is a great slate. I think it's completely wide open. And how are you guys feeling about it?
Yeah, I don't feel like there's a lot of games that stick out outside of the Houston-Atlanta game. So you're right with the cheap value in Arizona and Cincinnati will be probably pretty chalky where people go. But you look at all the studs. I mean, running back wise, a lot of good spots here. Wide receivers, going to be some chalky wide receivers, and you're going to get a lot of cheap value wide receivers. I think that pop up after these questionable tags get cleared up a little bit. But yeah, a lot of different options, but not like any great game stacks that I see. I think there's a few that are probably going to be under owned, and it should be interesting. Like I kind of like the Jets at Philly game if Darnold plays. Both Jets wide receivers I think are really in play there. So, but yeah, kind of interested to hear what you guys got.
I mean, for me, I think, you guys pretty much hit on the head where outside of like one game, maybe two, I'm with you, Kirkwood. I do like that Cincy game. We can talk about it a little more as we go. But
let me give you my quick take on it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. It feels like It feels like NBA, where it's like the Hawks against the Suns, like too bad, or I don't, whoever played at an even faster pace than the Suns, because the Suns weren't very fast last season, but like two high-paced, crappy teams that just go off, right? Especially when there's like value to be had. That's what it kind of feels like to me.
Yeah, that's exactly how I kind of see it. Is both of these defenses are just terrible. They can't stop anybody, and I mean that just sets up for offenses, even weaker offenses, to do well. And Kyler doesn't have probably Christian Kirk, who looks like he's going to be out, and they're down a few weapons, but that just means he's going to use his legs more. I think he's going to run a little bit more. I think David Johnson, they might try and just kind of feed him in every way possible, running maybe a little more for him, more running volume, a ton of receptions. He's gotten 20 targets over his last two games. I mean, so we love that for the passing game for David Johnson. I see that happening again. I see him getting, 7 to 10 targets in the passing game for sure without Kirk. And then Fitzy's just obviously a great play. So you can really key in on a lot of these guys since he's the same way. You got Tyler Boyd. You can key on him and Joe Mixon. If you like the tight end situation, you can take Tyler Eifert. But I mean, like, you can really key in some of the top plays in this game very easily. So that's why I like it. It's not just the pace, but it's really easy to pick out the guys you need from each team.
Yeah, and the problem is that both of these offensive lines are terrible, but like these defenses are so bad that you hope that they just can make it happen, right? And here's a food for thought with David Johnson, right? So I was trying to think about like how are they going to do this with we've got Farrell Cooper added into the mix, we've got that Isabella guy that was like preseason, and people I guess he's a high pick, but like the Cardinals don't seem to like him. A lot of people are talking about. I don't really know much about him or anything, but what makes sense to me in my head is like Chase Edmonds is pretty good. He's not bad, right? Like, wouldn't it make sense like when they go to like downs where they would rest David Johnson a little bit or whatever and put Edmonds in there? Wouldn't it make sense to have David Johnson in there as a receiver and use both of them at the same time?
Right. Start throwing him into like the slot, similar to what Jalen Samuel did last week. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see both running backs because I feel like both running backs are legit talented.
So, I mean, one of two things are going to happen. And sorry, I'm being asked to take my glasses off. The camera is freaking out. But the producer, Dev is asking me politely to take my glasses off, so I'm going to do it.
Fans want to see those beautiful eyes, man.
That's the difference between Simon and, Simon would never do that.
But
wow.
I mean, here's the thing: is they're gonna run 4 wide receiver sets, so they're gonna have 2 inside receivers. Now, Kirk played a ton inside, and so does Fitz. So with him out, I think you're right. It's either one of 2 ways. Either they play a lot of 2 running back sets where they put David Johnson or Chase Edmond in one of those inside positions, inside receiver slots, or they play more Andy Isabella, or they kind of rotate between them because they don't seem – everyone's saying like, oh, they don't seem to love Andy Isabella because they like signed Michael Crabtree and like played around with a bunch of outside receivers. But that's because Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald are mainly inside receivers. So unless one of those guys goes out, there's no spot on the field for Andy Isabella. So it's not that they don't like him. They're just he doesn't have a fit on that team unless he's playing inside. So that to me makes the most sense. So now does he just slot in for Kirk as the inside receiver, the second inside receiver to Fitz? Or
they're talking Pharaoh Cooper.
Like, is it Pharaoh Cooper?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what
someone's going to take that role. I don't believe Pharaoh Cooper is going to run 90%.
So here's the latest report.
Slot, so.
Latest report: Cardinals coach Cliff Kingsbury said rookie Andy Isabella is going to play mostly outside wide receiver for the time being.
Wow.
So that puts him behind. That puts him behind Keyshawn Johnson and Trent Sherfield.
Yeah, but listen, you don't want anyone that's playing the outside receiver for that team anyways, do you?
Which makes me think that we're going to see extra David Johnson, who's going to play some in the slot there.
What do you mean extra? He's already getting like
I know, but like
8
I feel like he's going to. I feel like he's going to be a legit receiver,
more involved,
a percentage of snaps in this game. Like
so, Isabella really isn't going to be used because he's behind those.
That's
two
what it
outside
sounds
guys.
like. That's what it sounds like.
So then who's going in? Then it must be David Johnson. You're probably right. Maybe Chase Edmonds and David Johnson, maybe you can play them together.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're right. That's what I mean. That's something where like I think people are going to just have to make up their own mind on how they view it and see it. You could obviously just go the easy route and take DJ. But if you're playing like a Millie Maker, I think Kirkwood's onto something where you could stack them both, honestly, and, take Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's going to run too. He's going to use his legs, I think, a lot in this game. So I don't mind it, even if you just want to go him. If you don't know who's going to, get the run or whatever. But I think him and DJ is the best pairing personally, if you just want like for sure. And then it would be Fitz. And then
it seems just so easy to just go Murray, Fitz, and DJ, and then run it back with either Mixon or Boyd.
It's too easy.
Or you can even throw, because Tate's price is so low, you can throw I'm not opposed to running it back 12. I'm not opposed to just going all in on this game either, like Ricky D did with the Rams. Like, did you see what he did?
No, I didn't see that.
I did actually.
That dude's a DFS legend. He played 100% Winston Goff stacks on the main.
I saw he crushed it. Yeah. I saw his lineups. He had a ton of Rams.
The nice part about these two teams is they're both they're the top 2 in neutral situation pass rates. So we know that they both want to pass. Cincinnati passes at a 73% clip and Arizona at a 69% clip. They both have obviously injuries here. So I think you got to find the right value, but it's going to be tough to figure out what they want to do with that second slot. Because I agree. I don't think Pharaoh Cooper is going to be running too many routes, but if this does open up David Johnson, and we do expect a huge play increase, the clock will be stopped with all the passes that they do run here. So I think David Johnson, perfect spot for him.
I think he's my top running back, like at least on PPR sites. I think he's by far the top running back. I don't even think it's close, to be honest with you.
All right, so let's continue on down this QB road. Let's stick to the same game for a second. So let's get some takes on Andy Dalton, who's coming in at under 5% owned per Jamino's projections. Might get a little higher. I think you're going to like him, JSU, because you always like Andy Dalton, but they did look so horrendous the other night. But that was a completely different defense with the Steelers versus the Cardinals here. So what are your guys' takes on Dalton?
Yeah, I like a Dalton bounce back spot at home versus this team. I'm gonna definitely have like if I'm making 10 lineups on a site, I'd probably have at least 1 to 2 Andy Dalton lineups for sure. I'll be stacking this game in a lot of different aspects, but I actually do not like Kyler Murray maybe as much. I haven't felt good with his passing game, him getting it downfield, and I just not a believer in any of these pass catchers that have a monster game. So I'd rather buy like the smaller pieces, like getting the cheap value wide receivers or David Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that Andy Dalton, I think he's a fine play. I mean, I prefer Kyler Murray personally. I do think that Kyler makes more sense if I had to pick between two of these guys, just because I think if they're going to have like real running success, like Kyler's going to be a weapon with his legs and through the air. You know, they're going to throw a ton, but I think he uses his legs a lot. Andy Dalton is really one-dimensional. He doesn't really use his legs. So like you could easily see a scenario where Joe Mixon could have a decent game against this Arizona team that struggles against the run. So like if I was to have to pick between one of the two, I think Kyler makes the most sense just because his targets, we already talked about it, DJ and Larry are just so easy to plug in. And then he's a weapon both through the air and on the ground. So I like Dalton, but I'm going to have more Kyler just because of that.
We also had a question in the comments of last week's show about, the amount of lineups that we play, and if we could try to talk about what kind of contests we're talking about for each player. I know it gets a little hard, but did I characterize this correctly? Like typically, I know, John, you're not a mass entry guy. You're like anywhere from 3 to 20 lineup type of guy depending on the slate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right on. I don't make I think the most lineups I've made this year is like 15 or 20 at most. Actually the Yahoo contest was actually the first time I made 25 or something that day, but that was the most I've ever made in any year ever. And that was like a $10 or $20 entry. But normal slates, like on DK, when we're talking, I'm making like Chris said, 3 to 20 or 5 to 15, somewhere around there lineups. And it all depends on the slate and what I'm entering and stuff like that. But I'm pretty consistent, I feel like.
And what about
those
you,
lineups,
Brett?
Yeah, but just a main cash and main GPP on every single site, and then I just kind of look through the industry, what's being offered. And then I usually focus 1 or 2 sites where I kind of produce like 6 to 10 lineups. So that's like you were saying at the beginning of the show, like how you feel spread so thin, and I try to not to get to that point, but I don't formulate my tournament teams and everything until late Saturday night, until all the news drops. So I try and just focus on maybe 2 sites to really produce a lot of lineups.
So the way that we're kind of talking about these plays is that we're talking about a condensed core of plays here that may be included in anywhere between 3 to 10 lineups pretty much. I do some mass entry stuff. I'm trying to get better at that, but I'll definitely say that for like large field mass entry type stuff. But pretty much the plays that we like, we're talking about plays that we like for our potentially even less than 10 lineups. All right, so the highest owned quarterback here is Deshaun Watson. Any of you guys going to take a stand with him?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, you have Kyler Murray at 6,300. It's tough for me to pay on DraftKings. It's tough for me to pay that price when you have Deshaun at 6,700. And again, in tournaments, I don't really look at quarterback ownership as much just because it's so thin. But even Matt Ryan, I think at 5,900. I mean, I'd like to have overexposure to both Deshaun and Matt Ryan in that game.
Yeah, I mean, that game seems like the clearest route that everyone's going to go to. I feel like Deshaun will be obviously the most popular in that game, but Matt Ryan will just garner some ownership, even though he's had a terrible start, just because that game is being like highly owned. So I feel like Matt Ryan,
he hasn't had a terrible start.
Well, he didn't have a terrible. I meant like a terrible game. I know he's had 23 or more point DK games out of his last 4, and he had 19 last game. But he had a terrible game. Like I watched that entire game. That was terrible. Like, don't tell me that was a good game for Matt Ryan.
He was 3 yards short of becoming the 4th player in history to throw for 400 yards in a game without any touchdowns and interceptions.
Yeah, and you call that good? Like, is that what you're saying? Like,
no, I don't. I want touchdowns, but
right.
I think there's opportunity for some, regression on the touchdown side of things, and that, he could certainly pop off for a big game. I mean, he's certainly passing the ball. They're certainly been playing from behind. Their defense is certainly in shambles. Whenever they've been without Keanu, what's his name?
Keanu Neal.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever they've been without him, they've just been terrible as a defensive unit. And so I don't see that changing this week. So right. The opportunity is certainly there. Their rushing has not been great so far. We'll get to that. I kind of
I think that's the problem with him, though, a little bit. And teams are starting to catch on, is like they're having no success through the ground, like on the ground. So, which is really not helping him. Like, I think from, a touchdown standpoint and, finishing drives and sustaining drives, really. Like, you can't get into a rhythm if you can't get positive yardage on the ground and get 3-4 yards on first down when you're running the ball. If you're getting stopped for negative yards sometime, which was happening in that game, like they were getting set up for 2nd and 12 all the time, where Matt Ryan, like you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole when you run the ball on first down and you get negative 2 yards. Like, you need to have success running to set up the throw. And both these teams have struggled with that, like in the past. Like Houston struggles with it a little bit too. But like, I think we're all just saying like both these defenses are exploitable and both these quarterbacks are clearly super talented. Just, I think those are some of the problems with why they've struggled at times to finish. I think we'd all agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, his yards per attempt were legit last game, but like I said, like I think this is more about the run game not being successful. I mean, it was nice to see Devontae Freeman get all the pass catching, but man, Ito Smith and Devontae, just nothing on the ground. So if this is something like where they become just one-dimensional, it's pretty easy to play against a one-dimensional team.
Well, I think what happened last week, I think Alex Mack, their center, went down last week with an elbow injury. So that certainly hurt their running game. I don't know what his status is for this game. So that's something to monitor, something I'll look at. But I see positive indications for Devontae Freeman. I think he's had a tough schedule so far. I think he's going to break out and have a good game, but we'll get to that. So what are you going to do with Deshaun Watson? Are you going to play more Matt Ryan, John, because of the ownership, or what are you thinking?
I mean, you can do that. I wouldn't really worry too much about the quarterback ownership. Really, I think the position you worry the least about when it comes to ownership is quarterback. So I wouldn't really worry about that. I think Matt Ryan is a fine play. Deshaun Watson's definitely better, but ownership wise, you're getting him lower on. But I wouldn't really put that in like too much in your decision making for me, honestly.
All right. From there, we've got Lamar Jackson. We've got Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz. These are guys that are next. I'm just going down the list from Jamino's ownership. Jameis Winston at the Saints. Any of these guys doing anything for you?
Yeah, I'd be on Carson Wentz. Like I have him as a guy that I kind of want to be over-owned on. Philly has the highest implied for a team on this slate. And, if Jordan Howard doesn't get off early, I can see that him being a closer. But, again, it's kind of going to depend on Darnold. If Darnold plays, I think this game has a possibility of being a really sneaky shootout style of game. And I'm going to want to have a lot of Jets exposure to it. So, yeah, I'm going to have plenty of tournament teams with Wentz and then bringing it back, with the Jets. So probably mostly I feel very good about Ertz's spot here. Don't know exactly where I'm going to go with wide receiver yet. But yeah, I still like this spot overall as a game with kind of a weaker slate overall, a weaker slate of games anyway.
Yeah, this sets up if Sam Darnold plays. I mean, he's got.
Do you think he's gonna play?
I don't know. I don't know. Like I feel like
he's being optimistic.
Play him. I feel like they should hold him out one more week. Like I don't know why you would want to like just rush him back, especially after, obviously it was pretty serious. Like they didn't want to like do any like serious damage to him, rushing him back too early and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't see why they would. So if he plays, I mean, it obviously is better for the guys on that team, like Jamison Crowder, who maybe people will kind of forget, but like he was getting a ton of balls from Sam Darnold before he went out. And he's very cheap and affordable, especially on PPR sites, so, and then the matchup is just very good. It sets up for long passes. I think like Robbie Anderson would be in play if, Sam Darnold played, but I just don't see them running him out there. I don't know. What about you guys?
Yeah, if he played and he was healthy, I mean, I think that's a big if. I would be totally interested if I, had faith that he was healthy and felt pretty good because, this Philly pass defense is completely decimated. They were terrible. Now their top 4 guys are all going to be out for this game. So then I would have interest in Robbie Anderson would be the guy that I would want. But man, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Falk, and I think it's just going to be a gross Jets offense again.
Darnold's last comment on his spleen. It's good, I think. I don't really know. So it's like a classic Kirkwood-like statement. That's good, I think. I don't really know. But yeah, it seems like he's optimistic.
I hope he has people that know. Like,
right.
All right. So, who's popping in the Blitz?
Ooh, let's hear it.
And the Blitz has been amazing so far this season. So I just want to let people know that. Shout out to Derek Carty. But the Blitz optimals are all running Teddy Bridgewater right now. Sure, I have a feeling that'll be tweaked, but I don't know. You remember last year that like the Blitz was all over like Fitzpatrick that week that he went absolutely nuts. I think it was like the first week of the season, and everyone made fun of it, and it broke the slate. I just don't think Teddy Bridgewater is going to break the slate, but I just thought that was really interesting. So I've been looking at builds, but like completely Xing out Teddy Bridgewater. So Phillip Rivers is an interesting guy, right? Like looks like he's going to he didn't get much ownership last week for what he should have had. Looks like, he would have been tremendous until that because no game went off until that Rams game went berserk. But I definitely, am interested in playing him even, against Denver, who's just not been a great defense this season whatsoever. With in all the injuries and Inman going down and them not going to make, there's no way they're going to make Melvin Gordon a workhorse. And they've already said they're going to ease him in. I mean, I think you can go right back to a condensed target share with either, Keenan Allen, Eckler, or Mike Williams could probably be the play this week, assuming he comes back and plays and is healthy, because Harris probably will travel with Keenan Allen in this one.
Yeah. I think that that would make the most sense for them to shadow Keenan Allen. So if that's the case, Mike Williams would be the clear play in tournaments. He'll probably get low ownership too, just because, he's coming off the injury. People are going to want to see him. They might not know how much they'll run him out there. But if he plays, I think they're going to play him because they're going to need him out there, like, a lot. So, and he gets the best matchup by far. But it seems like, I feel like the matchup for Keenan Allen, like, isn't lowering his ownership. Like sometimes you see when these really good receivers are going up against good cornerbacks and they're shadowing them, you sometimes see their ownership dip, but it's not really happening with Keenan Allen. But I still think he's a great play. I just think like if he's going to be very high owned and he's going to have a good cornerback shadowing him, like Mike Williams makes the most sense if he's out there.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah, we have Keenan right now as the highest owned wide receiver on DraftKings at 28.2, which seems really high. But again, DraftKings hasn't raised his price to like the elite level that he's at. And I think like when you do have an elite wide receiver versus one of the top corners, the ownership is usually never there, and I've probably made mistakes in the past with not going strong. So, but yeah, it's going to be tough to swallow if he's going to be 28% owned. Like I don't know if I'm going to have that high ownership on him.
All right, to close this out, there's a couple guys I want to touch on really quickly. First, I want to get your guys' take on, nobody's going to play Kirk Cousins. This Giants defense is horrendous. They looked a lot better than they are because it was Washington last week. And we've got that narrative, right? We've got Thielen complained out to the media. Diggs has already, said that there's truth to him, asking to leave, to go to another team. So, I mean, everybody's barking right now. And this is a game that they should be able to handle. And the Giants, who've just been decimated through the air up until last week. Do you think there's anything to a potential sneaky Kirk Cousins play this week in tournaments?
I'd be buying into it for sure. I've kind of like already created one with the Viking stack. So, I mean, it's obviously going to be narrative driven, but we know this Giants is bad both passing and running. I feel way better about Dalvin Cook having the same role, but also I'd like to get some tournament exposure if the narrative kind of goes off. And I'm sticking to Thielen way over Diggs. I mean, obviously we had Diggs not show up and it wasn't injury related to practice. So makes me off of him because I don't know where he's at mentally and even what the team is at with him and how much he's going to be worked into the game plan. So.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, it's narrative-driven is your first way to go. But if you just look at the numbers, it also is a really good matchup, like a get-right spot for Kirk Cousins and for all these receivers. Like, yes, they could run the ball all over the Giants, but Kirk Cousins, I mean, yes, he's been bad, but he could easily beat this secondary of the Giants. I mean, Adam Thielen, DeAndre Baker – it's going to be on him for a lot of this game. Like Adam Thielen is going to eat him up. I mean, Stephon Diggs is just super talented. Mike Evans is obviously a really good receiver, but you saw what he did against Janoris Jenkins, who I don't think he's a terrible cornerback, I would say. I just think like he sometimes is a little lazy. But like he's not as awful as people think, but he's absolutely susceptible to being beat on deep routes, and Diggs could obviously do that. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm gonna buy into this, but it also has like the numbers kind of support it as well. Like it's not just narrative for me. Like the numbers really do support this stack, I think.
Right. It's all about knowing their offensive philosophy. If they're willing to give into players' demands or players like, bickering. I mean, you don't want to lose a guy like Stephon Diggs to trade, man. I mean, like this is a spot where I think you got to make people happy and you can win with the pass. It's just how much do they want to refocus that offense?
And here's the thing too, right? If you don't fully buy into Kirk Cousins, like just throwing all over the Giants, just take one of the receivers and then stack them with Dalvin Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Play them both. Because, honestly, it's going to go one of two ways. Like, I feel like either Kirk Cousins is throwing all over this team or one of those receivers is going to have a good game and Dalvin Cook's going to rush for 150 yards and a touchdown or two. Like, I feel like it's going one of those ways.
Right. And give it up to Saquon. You guys see him working out already with that high ankle sprain? Like, he's like doing cuts and everything. Yeah, but
absolute beast.
It would be stupid for the Giants.
I hope he plays against the Pats because I got tickets for that game. So
can you imagine FanDuel has him at 4,500? I think.
Yeah, they do that to all their injured players. They just
how dumb is that?
I know.
All right, we're going off on tangents. We're trying to stick to a schedule here.
We don't have a schedule.
I got to bring order. To the show. So then my other guys I want to touch on: Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. I mean. The Pats are playing Washington. I mean, they should absolutely annihilate them. And Sony Michel, this could be a Sony Michel game, but this could be just Brady, just on the gas the entire time, just padding their numbers here. And Jamino's got him low owned. So what are your guys' thoughts? And then Aaron Rodgers, he's not expensive. Except,
let's hit on every quarterback. Why don't we just go down?
That's it. Then we're done.
Yeah, I have no interest in either or. I don't hate the Brady one, but I think Rodgers without Devontae Adams, it doesn't make sense to me to go there.
That's definitely a downgrade, but
and I
it makes
also
it
see
stackable with guys like MVS or Geronimo.
Right. It's just mainly me predicting that game is going to get ugly. You have a Dallas team without their left tackle, their stud left tackle. I just see a lot more running with Zeke there, and I don't think there's going to be as many plays, and just feel like it's going to be a tough situation for Rodgers, who hasn't looked good this year without his main weapon. So
you brought it up right there. Like the left tackle is a big thing because obviously the left tackle is huge for the quarterback, like protecting the quarterback, and those deep routes are going to be a little tougher to connect with for Dak Prescott if he doesn't have as much time, obviously from Smith not being there. So that lends me to believe they're going to try and run the ball. Obviously, that's what they try and do every game, yes, but they're going to do short passes, quick, get the ball out of his hands, and then run the ball as much as possible and just drain this clock. And I feel like Brett's right. Like this game, it's going to be the volume's not going to be there for me to want to stack this game up. I think you could take a player from each side, but I don't think I'd want to fully stack this game up because I just don't see it being a back and forth game.
I mean, I could certainly make the case for like playing Zeke, who should have his way with the way that the Packers have defended the run, totally. and then taking a cheap, stacking him with a cheap Rodgers and Scanling or probably MVS, to be honest with you. But I mean, it's just so cheap. I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyways,
the last time Tyron Smith was out, it was in 2017, and in those 4 games, Cowboys scored 7, 9, 12, and 6 points. So not sexy offense without him. And I know right when he got hurt in the fourth quarter, the left tackle looked really bad. He got beat multiple times, and Dak was just getting rid of the ball versus Saints. So I don't know. This is a spot where I just think they run the ball, which is kind of, their offensive philosophy definitely has changed this year, but I think they go right back to Zeke here.
All right, let's move on over to running back. I mean, then there's going to be a ton of really bad, low-owned guys like potentially like Chase Daniels or and we'll see if Josh Allen plays. Or I mean, this could be a week where like any quarterback could get it done for you. Because I don't think there's like slate breaking upside. So, man, everybody's in play for me. But let's move on over to running back. It's going to be no secret that the Christian McCaffrey is leading the way for our ownership projections here. Then we've got Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Zeke. These are some of the top guys. Eckler might lose some because people are worried about Melvin Gordon, but and David Johnson, and then we've got Aaron Jones with Williams potentially out. Finally gonna be the bell back that we've been waiting for. And he's pretty inexpensive. So these are some of the guys that are popping ownership. Who are you guys like? First thoughts?
Yeah, my first thought is just in Pittsburgh. Like if Connor did not practice today. If we do get that dirt cheap value of Jalen Samuels, it's going to change.
It ain't happening.
You don't think so?
I don't.
He hasn't.
So.
He didn't practice today, man. Like
I don't think it happens either. I
think he's fine. I think he just.
They put him back in after the injury. Like after he injured his ankle, they put him back in. So I don't think they would have put him back in if it was towards the end of the game. They already had the game kind of sealed, and they still put him back in. I don't know why they did that. Anyways, it didn't really make any sense, but. Whatever.
I mean, if that's the case, he's the most obvious play in the world, Samuel. So we don't have to really even worry about that, right?
If you believe in them moving forward, though, with the 2 running backs, like the way they utilized them last game, though, Jalen Samuel at 4,100 is still a great play, and ownership-wise will be very low. So.
I don't believe in that gimmick offense like that. Baltimore's gonna. That was against a bad defense. Like Baltimore is a much better D, and everyone's gonna say, "Well, Nick Chubb ran for 170 yards or whatever." But Nick Chubb is I think one of the better pure talented running backs in the entire league. Baltimore is obviously gonna focus on that. They're going to watch the Pittsburgh game, make Mason Rudolph throw the ball downfield, which he's he obviously, they don't want him doing that a ton. So Baltimore is smart. They're going to force him they're going to come up in the box and they're going to force him to throw the ball down the field and make him beat like one-on-one coverage. I don't think they're going to be able to just do that gimmick offense the entire time. Now that teams have seen it, they have tape on it, they're going to be ready for it. Since he wasn't ready for it, that was the first time they rolled that out really all season.
And since he's just horrendous. And the funny thing is I scoured, I was putting in a lot of time for that showdown slate. And I was thinking it makes so much sense for them to use Samuels. And I played him. I had a decent amount of them, but I didn't have the Pittsburgh D or whatever, but with him. But the funniest thing is the first report I read out of Pittsburgh, local guys was since they're definitely not going to be utilizing Samuels in this game. And I was like, oh, so if I just got them to, if they just said this is going to be the game and Samuel's going to break out, I would have been had so much more Samuels because I was just looking for that. And then this guy just shot that down and he didn't know anything.
You did clearly.
Yeah, it's funny. It was the first thing that they said. It's just funny to me. All right. So I think David Johnson is going to go up in the ownership, right? Jamino's got him down. Not even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's got him as the 8th highest owned. I think he's going to be the 2nd highest owned behind McCaffrey. May even be the 1st highest by the end of this week. I think he's going to get a lot of love by shows like us and everyone else. Not that we're moving ownership, but other shows that are moving ownership. So I think.
I don't know how he's not up there already.
Yeah, I think he'll be changing that.
He's a clear, he's a volume back. He's gonna, with Kirk out, it's only even clearer that he's gonna see those targets consistently without Kirk. That's what that says.
Yeah, I think it's just that you have every stud running back on the slate, though, right? I mean, you have the McCaffrey, the Cooks, the Zeke, Kamaras. So I can see a lot of that being taken out of the David Johnson.
So you're saying them paying because he's 7,500, he's too close to those guys. So if people are paying up, they might try and get the extra money to get up to Kamara, Zeke, Cook. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys are going to take a lot of the ownership. I mean, McCaffrey 100% is going to be the highest owned out of that group, but then I see a lot of people still going to Cook and Zeke for sure. I don't know. Kamara, I don't think will be that popular, but David Johnson, to me, with the injury, with the pace, with the amount of plays, he's right there. I love him this week. So
can we talk about McCaffrey, because I have a pretty strong stance on him this week where I don't think I'm going to have a ton of him. And yes, ownership is one of the reasons, but I think another reason is are we Jacksonville's defense they're a solid defense. Ramsey should play. Do they just force Kyle Allen to beat AJ Bouye and Jalen Ramsey on the outside and just stack the box and force him to throw downfield? Cause that seems to me what they would try and do. And obviously McCaffrey's going to get his dump offs. He's going to get his, they run certain plays where they're just swing plays that are clear, just he's the number one, point of the play where he just gets easy passes and easy catches. And, obviously that's easy points, but I don't know, if he gets you 20 at chalk, I think you could beat that. And I think Kamara comes in lower owned, as a tournament play. I think if Zeke's lower owned than McCaffrey, I think he's great in tournaments because me and Brett both said anyways, we think it's clear they're going to try and run the ball as much as possible. And, Zeke's going to obviously be heavily used in that. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't like McCaffrey as much as the field, I guess. What are you guys' takes on that? Because I see a way where Jacksonville can kind of keep him in check, where if he's getting you 18 to 21, you're not really that upset that you faded him.
Right. We do talk a lot about defensive philosophy on this show. And it's if you're playing Carolina, how do you not just focus all your focus, on stopping Christian McCaffrey? So it's make the young kid beat you through the air. And think about how big Christian McCaffrey's day could have been if it wasn't for for Kyle Allen, just fumbling, I think 3 times. He had 3 turnovers. So yeah, that's exactly what I see too. But like, I don't mind taking that stance in tournaments, but I mean, I have to pay up for just the amount of workload that McCaffrey gets at 8,700. I think he's as safe as it gets in cash, but I like to take in tournaments for sure to go.
This isn't a cash show, Brett. We don't want. We're not talking about cash. We want to win tournaments here,
right?
Here it is. Christian McCaffrey played every single snap on offense. He touched the ball on 54% of the plays. He is now in Allen's 2 starts, has a 23% target share. The next high, and he's tied for the lead with Samuel. You're looking at their number 1 receiver, their number 1 running back, who's on the field for every single play. Now, yes, you're correct. It's a tough matchup. It's Jacksonville, and they are probably going to do some smart things. But you can't deny that volume and that opportunity.
It's not denying it, but if you're just looking at it in tournaments and he's 30% owned, and you have, if Elliott comes in at 15%, or if David Johnson comes in at 12% or whatever we have him at, like, I don't know. I just feel like in tournaments, I feel like those plays, those pivots are much better with the ownership that you're getting on those guys. I think they could easily match McCaffrey too. That's the other thing. It's not like we're taking, like Royce Freeman, you know what I mean, to pivot off, guys that don't have the ceiling. We're taking guys with the ceiling that are just going to be much lower owned. And I think in tournaments, you're not, especially if you make one lineup, if you're listening to the show and you make one lineup and you're playing it in like the Millie Maker, if you're not fading these guys, even guys in great spots, like you can just say McCaffrey, no matter what, is in a great spot. Like, you should be fading those guys because it's the only way you're beating 200,000 entries or 300,000 entries. That's the only way you're going to win. Like, you're not going to win playing all the chalk. You have to fade some of that chalk. All right. You don't have to fade it all, but like, you need to fade some of those guys that are going to be 30%. So, I mean, I feel like in tournaments, it makes the most sense to fade McCaffrey at the running back spot.
Yeah, I hear you, but I'm going to have a good amount of McCaffrey.
All right, and I will have none. Just for your good amount, I will have none, and that'll even us out.
All right, I appreciate.
So if we see a JSU lineup with CMAC, we have.
You will not. No, you will not see on DraftKings. You will not see a JSU lineup with Christian McCaffrey. I will guarantee, and FanDuel, guaranteed.
Right. So Leonard Fournette. All of a sudden, did the Undertaker rose from the dead, that gif last week against the Broncos.
How's he score no touchdowns in that game?
But he still does. So touchdown regression is happening. He's going to get touchdowns. Carolina is really strong through the pass. So this just sets up for him, again. But do you guys like? I mean, this is another guy who's, yes, he did actually lose some snaps last week, but that's probably just for rest purposes. He was down to 84% of the snaps. But, I mean, he's a volume guy. So do you guys like him?
Yeah, I mean, at like $2,300 less than McCaffrey, I mean, with almost the same type of snaps and usage that McCaffrey's getting, obviously not as worked into the pass game, but for how bad both those offenses are, I mean, you're getting a huge price decrease here. So I definitely like Fournette. Few other guys that I would have exposure at this range. But yeah, Fournette, I'll be right there. Probably a little bit more than the field.
Yeah. For me, Leonard Fournette's a guy who I'm just not – I haven't really been into this year. I think from a volume standpoint, he's a fine play. He's pretty cheap actually for like how much he's playing and how much volume he is seeing. So like I have no problem with it. I'm going to be more exposed to guys around his price like Joe Mixon, who I think has one of the better matchups on the entire slate at running back. But it's one of those things where he hasn't had that great of a start to a season, but I could see this as like a ceiling game.
Terrible offensive line, but I love him.
That's why he's had a terrible start. It's because of the offensive line, clearly.
But it's not like he ever looks bad. Mixon always looks good. You know?
Yeah, and if he's getting the volume and this pace of play goes up like we think it will, it makes a lot of sense for Mixon. So, I mean, I'm going to have a bunch of Mixon.
He's getting targets, too. I love him.
Yeah. Yep.
Love him. All right. Eckler. I kind of like Eckler a lot, especially if he's going to fall out of favor here. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I was actually surprised with his ownership and like how high people are projecting him. I thought people would be for sure off him with the Melvin Gordon news, but this could be another 2 running back situation. I know we've already kind of talked a little bit about how hurt the wide receivers are. This could be a spot where Eckler is lined up in the slot a little bit more often, just putting most of their talent out on the field. So I don't mind it. It's obviously a tournament only play, but I'll probably be actually under-owned from the field if we're going by Jumino's ownership today, which is 12.5% on DK. So I just would rather buy other people where I feel a little bit better about the situation.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I don't mind him for tournaments. I think they will line 2 running backs up at some points, and they will use him in the passing game more, line him up at receiver a little bit. So that makes sense. I think that's why his ownership is still like somewhat up there, and it's not like very low because he should be used in the passing game. They need help in the passing game right now. They're down a few players, so it would make a lot of sense. I'm not as high on it, I don't think, as Chris is for tournaments, but I still don't mind it.
I just don't think they're going to use Gordon too much, but we'll see how that shakes out. Aaron Jones, I want to hear you guys' thoughts.
I'm off of Aaron Jones. I know, we think that he's going to take a huge share of the backfield, but LaFleur has kind of consistently said that he doesn't want to give Aaron Jones enough work. It's kind of bit me in the past when I was confident that he was going to start overtaking. So I don't expect Jamal Williams to play, but forget something Williams that they have as their 3rd string running back. I do expect him to have a role.
It's Danny Vitale.
Oh, yeah. I think there's another running back. Vitale, I think, is more their fullback, but it's just me not being a believer in this game overall that has me off of Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I'm not going to be on him either. I'm going to be more on Zeke. I'm going to have less Aaron Jones. It's not that I'm not on him. I'm just not going to have as much of him because I'm going to have more Joe Mixon, more David Johnson. I think I'm going to have a little more Derrick Henry too. Taylor Lewan comes back. I see this as being a very ugly game where there's not a ton of people I want, like from a fantasy perspective, but Derrick Henry's probably the one guy from this game that I am going to have a good amount of. Like I said, especially with Lewan coming back, that's just going to bolster their O-line. I think it's going to help him a lot. He's looked real good to start the season, I think, and it's only going to be better with that O-line being better. So I like him a lot in tournaments today. I think he comes in lower ownership, so I like him. And then one other guy, I don't know. I'm still debating on if I'm going to go here, but Ronald Jones has looked pretty good. And the coaches came out and said that he's getting better every day. They like him. You see his snaps go up. He had I think it was 2 big runs called back on holding plays. I think one was like a 50-yarder and one might have been a little longer, but he could have had 170 yards on the ground or something it was something crazy like that if it wasn't for all these holding calls. So, I mean, it's not the best matchup against New Orleans, but I don't know, 4,600 for a guy, if his snaps continue to go up and he's looked good. I mean, what are you guys' takes on it? I think I might be in for tournaments, especially large field GPPs. So, I mean, what about you guys?
Yeah, for me, it would be tournament only. It's a thing where he's just not involved in the pass game. Dario Ngumboale is still kind of their 3rd down guy. So Ronald Jones has, when he had targets, I believe he's only got 5, or it's actually 3 targets. He has looked good in each one of those catches. I kind of saw a video where they did all 3 of them. But, yeah, obviously the work share of the running percentage has gone up each week, which is nice. It's just a spot where I feel like he can get if Tampa Bay is not in the lead, that he just gets worked out of the game.
I just don't see that with Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think they're going to be like, I don't know. I think Tampa can keep it close. That's just my thought. But if you don't think they can, then you shouldn't play Ronald Jones. That's for sure. Because you're right. They need to be somewhat close in this game.
So my thing is that this is still a running back by committee. I mean, he took the lead. Ronald Jones did. Certainly. I think he certainly is the most talented and should be the guy playing. But they're going to still use Peyton Barber or some. And then they have however Killer B pronounced that guy. I'm not even going to try.
Dare. Yeah. From UW-Madison, baby.
He did a good job pronouncing it.
I stuttered.
I'm not even going to attempt it. But and then the Saints defense looks good, man, and they're really good against the rush. And I think they're just going to be passing. So
what would his ownership be if he had those 2 big runs? Like, I feel like it would be way up there. Like, I just feel like if he had those 2 big runs, his ownership would be skyrocketed right now, and he's at 2%. Like, so I feel like if you're taking a shot and you have one lineup and you're throwing it in a Millie Maker, like, I think he's a guy you could take a shot with. But I get what you're saying though. It still is a running back by committee. I think he takes over that eventually though, and I think we're starting to see it slowly.
I do like your Derrick Henry play a lot. I don't think people are going to want to play it because it's that against the Bills. But this is especially if Josh Allen doesn't play, this is a game that they should just control. Being home favorites. Henry played 75% of the snaps, which is close to the most he's ever played in his entire career. And this was against a team that you like to attack through with passing running backs. He's seen more targets, I believe, than Dion Lewis. He ran more routes last week than Dion Lewis. And the Bills have certainly, we know he's the goal line back, right? And the Bills have certainly allowed rushing touchdowns forever. And so this is a guy that I like a lot. I don't think people are going to play him.
Yeah, you guys got me sold on that play. Like, I just feel really strong, especially with Tennessee's defense being a lot better than I first assumed. This seems like a good spot for Derrick Henry just to go crazy big, get a lot of carries. So I like that spot.
And I know John likes him. All right. What are any other plays we got to discuss here?
I'll go quick with Jordan Howard. Like, I just feel like this is a spot where Philly should be able to impose their will, being 2 touchdown favorites. It's obviously not sexy.
You are a truther, my man. You are a Jordan Howard
you should have won Showdown the other night. You didn't play Showdown, though.
Yeah.
Sexy with the amount of targets he got versus the Packers. And, like, this is a spot where they should be able to get off running the ball. But, I mean, I do expect Miles Sanders to take more and more of the workload. So I actually don't mind either or. But I'd probably lean towards Jordan Howard just because Miles Sanders has not had 1 carry within the 5. So I just expect a lot of Philly scoring and running the ball for touchdowns.
John, any final plays you're missing? I think Philip Lindsay.
To Jordan Howard, and I think. Oh, you like Philip Lindsay? Talk about him real quick because I'm a little bit.
Well, I think it's just hit or miss, right? With him and Royce Freeman, I think the potential's there for him always to end up, if things break your way, right? And low ownership, and if he can get the touchdowns, so he's just a guy that I mean, it's nothing. There's no like secret formula there.
Yeah, so I think that right now you're still seeing like somewhat of a clear split, even though Freeman did see 61% of the snaps. But for some reason, they came out, they like him as, a pass blocker and in the pass catching game. And they said it, and that's why he played a little more, I think, because they were down and they kind of needed him in there, or their best pass blocker. And they like him in the pass game. And he's seen, I think, around 5 or more targets in his last 3 games or something like that. So, I mean, they are throwing him the ball. The volume is there for Royce Freeman, and I just feel like it's a spot where if anyone goes here, they're going to Lindsey, not Freeman. So I think it's an interesting pivot.
I have no problem with Freeman either. I think things just have to break your way. Break your way with either of them, and so they should be in play for GPPs.
They can absolutely have success on the ground too against the Chargers. Like that's one thing. Chargers can get gashed in the run game.
Let's bring it over to wide receiver. We'll try to make this quick because we're running over time here. Jamino's got Keenan Allen as the highest owned. Larry Fitz, Michael Thomas certainly looks really cheap, especially with the low volume passes that he's going to see from Teddy Bridgewater. And I mean, this guy's still a beast. It's not out of the question to say that they can't, he can't catch a touchdown in this game. And if he does, then he certainly could blow up at that price for 6.6K on DK, at least. Who else is in the mix here from ownership? I guess he's got Chris Godwin up there because people are going to run right after that, but I doubt he'll get a ton of ownership. Then we've got Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate. We want to touch on that. He looks good to me. He broke out 2 weeks ago, certainly backed it up again last week in a game where they just couldn't get anything going. This is a game they should get something going. He's a big guy, a nice big target for Dalton. So 3.5K, he does look like a good chalk to me. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I'd probably rather go Auden Tate than the Keyshawn Johnson play. Auden, I mean, we've kind of seen it already. But yeah, like you said, not like a super athletic guy, just a big target guy. But yeah, just a spot where I feel a lot more confident in Cincinnati getting off with the pass versus Arizona than I am on the Arizona side of things.
Yeah, for me, I like really the inside receivers for Arizona. So Keyshawn Johnson will probably play the outside. Mm-hmm. So I don't like any of the outside receivers. Like that's just how I'm playing it. So obviously Larry's in play there, and we talked about earlier David Johnson, maybe Chase Edmonds in a large field GPP if you think he's going to get more run. But other guys, Cincinnati guys we already talked about. I'm on both those guys. Auden Tate did get 2 end zone targets. One Dalton just kind of overthrew him a little bit, and one he just missed. But he's a big target. They're going to use him in the red zone and in the end zone too. So I like him too. I think there's no problem with him. And even at 15% for what we have him projected at right now, which I think that goes up a little bit, but like that's still pretty good. Even if he gets to 20, that's still pretty good for a guy who's 3.5K. And, I think he has a good shot at seeing 8 to 10 targets. I mean, that's all if your 3.5K receivers getting you 8 to 10 targets, I mean, that's a ton. That's a victory right there. What he does with them, that's a different story. But if he's getting it, that's all you can really ask for. So right. I like it. Yeah.
A great tournament pivot off of Auden Tate, and I don't know how popular this will be, is Kiki Kute. We saw it multiple times last year where he kind of just came in after being out and then just got peppered with targets. It seems like I've been hearing so much on Will Fuller, so much on DeAndre Hopkins.
It looks like Kenny Stills is going to play now.
Oh, it does? Okay. That's news to me. So,
he's here, I'll pull it. So he practiced again today.
Okay.
So
that would obviously change a lot.
Yeah, I think that kind of kills.
Yeah, I think you're right. If Kenny Stills wasn't going to play, I think Kiki would be a smart pivot, but obviously stay up on that. I mean, I'm on Adam Thielen. I think Adam Thielen has a great matchup against DeAndre Baker, who we'll see a good amount of. And I just think he shreds lesser competition. Like, you'll see it. And they're obviously going to put, try and get him in situations, Kirk Cousins and him, like get him throwing the ball down the field to Thielen and Diggs. So I have no problem with either of those guys, but I do have a lean towards Thielen. And then don't forget on FanDuel, Golden Tate is minimum price. For some reason, they forgot to price him up because they don't do that on FanDuel. So, I like Golden Tate. Like, I think he's a guy who is going to end up being the number one receiver, just like overall on that team. I think he'll be like their main guy. I know it's a tough matchup, but they're going to move him all around the field, I think. So, he'll see a little bit outside, inside. So, I wouldn't worry about the matchup too much. And I like him at his cheap price, both DK and FanDuel. I think he's a great play.
Yeah, big thing to know too, suspension and not injury. So like he should be back like 100%.
Fresh legs.
Mm-hmm. Oh baby. I just browsed the buy low air model. And
what do you got?
This thing crushes every single week. It doesn't it's not 100% accurate. It doesn't get them all, but it's all like these guys go off. Like Robert Woods was up there last week. The guy that's killing me every week on there is Marquise Brown. He's on there again, but Adam Thielen is right up there, coming in at fifth on the model, and Diggs right behind him. So man, if you can just buy into that narrative once and make this a get right spot for Kirk Cousins. There's just so much upside there. I like that. DeAndre Hopkins is on there. We haven't talked about Hopkins and Julio, right? These guys are going to be massively owned. We got to take a stand on some of these guys. I know, I like Julio. I like Ridley in this game too, as well. And everybody's talking about Will Fuller. I don't think this is the Will Fuller week. I think this is the Hopkins week where it's just completely Hopkins. So I know Fuller's cheap and offers that upside in this game, but I love Hopkins. What are you guys at with Julio and Hopkins?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be does Kenny Stills play, and then I'm going to go from there. But I think Hopkins, you got to have a decent percentage of that game in general. So between Hopkins and Julio, I think it'll still be somewhat under-owned, the elite wide receivers versus the elite running backs. I see a lot more ownership going towards the running backs. So I think just that alone, if you spend up at wide receivers, you're already going to be kind of making your lineup somewhat under-owned. Obviously the stacking opportunity in the Atlanta-Houston game is going to be huge, but kind of really need to know if Stills is going to play before I start really saying like anything too descriptive about what I want there.
Yeah, and I wonder too, these projections, I wonder if they're based off of Kenny Stills being presumably out, where I wonder if Kenny Stills, if he gets ruled in, lowers the ownership of what we're seeing right now is chalky Will Fuller and Hopkins, just because there's another guy involved. And people saw the offense with him in there. They didn't really perform. I think Hopkins, you're right, Chris, I think he could absolutely eat in this matchup, but Will Fuller is, he was like, fingertip away from catching a 70-yard bomb. Like, he has the ability to, absolutely smash at his price. So, I still think he's someone you can look at, but you're right. D-Hop is the tourney kind of play if you wanted to fade the cheap Will Fuller and go D-Hop.
I want Fuller when he's not going to be owned.
Well, I think if Stills is ruled in, I think Fuller's ownership drops. That's my opinion. I think if Stills gets ruled in, I think you see Fuller's ownership drop.
And it's not the greatest of all matchups because Atlanta likes to do that bend no break, where they play their zone, and I'm not saying Fuller can't get deep, but I think it's less likely. And I think the receivers that just absolutely crush the Falcons are the ones who just get peppered with target after target after target, and that feels like Hopkins to me.
I think Fuller could beat zone. I like him against zone defenses. He was with Carolina played zone, and he was, like I said, so close. They just missed on a 75-yard touchdown, and he beat two defenders. Like, he had like a clear 2 or 3 steps on those defenders.
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't happen. I think it definitely can happen. I think he's just getting too much love from me at this point. All right. Mike, I didn't hear anything. Did you guys talk about Michael Thomas at all?
JSU did.
Okay.
Just saying how he's underpriced. I think you, or actually,
I talked about
it was Kirkwood.
I did, but that's what I was saying. If you guys mention him,
no, I mean at that price, I mean that seems like one of the biggest misprice out there, right? I mean, and it's based upon his quarterback more than anything, but he is still the main focus when they're throwing the ball. I mean, the efficiency is just out of this world. It's been out of this world for the last year and a half.
We're talking about the price on DraftKings. Like, to be clear, right?
Yeah, at 6,600. His price over on FanDuel is
he's over like 75. He's like 75, 7,700 on FanDuel.
So closer to maybe the elite pricing over there. I mean it's just a spot where how efficient they are, and it's a great matchup versus Tampa Bay. It's the only thing here that's holding him back is Teddy Bridgewater. So I think he's a perfect tournament play. Even though ownership probably is going to be high. It looks like right now he's second highest with Jamino, or third highest. So, I mean, I still like it a lot.
Yeah, I don't mind it either at that cheap price, but I'll probably stay away from it on FanDuel, just DraftKings only.
A guy who looks good to me also is Cortland Sutton. Anybody?
Yeah,
takers?
I agree with Casey Hayward. It looks like he's going to be shadowing Emmanuel Sanders, and if that happens, then I mean Cortland Sutton is the clear guy who should have the best route, at least from a receiving standpoint, at making big plays and being targeted heavily. We've already seen it really this year. I mean, the guy's had 8, 7, 7, and 9 targets his first 4 games. So I mean, guy's a beast. We saw 2 touchdowns last game, and his ownership really shouldn't be that high. So, I mean, you're still going to get a guy at low ownership who has big playability and is obviously a big big target in the end zone.
Yep. All right. Any flyers out there?
I mean, I'll just throw out the Jets guys again. I know I've already kind of hit on this, but it's going to be kind of, I'd love to play them if Darnold is in. I would still be interested in Robbie Anderson if he's out. It's just a spot where they're going to have to pass quite a bit, and these Philly DBs are just terrible. We basically saw the Packers go one-dimensional versus Philly, which, obviously wasn't great near the red zone last week. But I think there's a spot where Robbie Anderson could definitely catch a big ball.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is if Josh Allen plays, I do like John Brown at his price in this matchup, because I still like getting those guys, big play, deep route receivers who can get behind the defense. And like I said, Tennessee struggles are playing with their back. Their corners struggle playing with their back to the ball. So those deep balls, I know they had a decent game last game, but they were really just stuffing the run and getting to Matt Ryan with a lot of pressure, which was causing him to kind of make mistakes and not get there as much. But I think it's one of those plays where John Brown could easily beat this defense for big plays if Josh Allen's in.
I'm going to throw one hometown boy out there, Philip Dorsett, I think could be in play with Josh Gordon is banged up right now in a easy matchup against Washington. It just feels like a game where he might get a couple of touchdowns here. I don't know. You never know. All right, let's move it over to tight end real quick, and then just throw out a couple of our favorite stacks. So Tyler Eifert looks like he's going to be pretty chalky. It's Will Dissly week all over again. Not a super talented, or at least Eifert was talented, but he's just, I don't know if he has a reconstructed back at this point. He doesn't look very talented anymore, but he's going to be on the field, and he's going to be a passing option against this defense who can't cover tight ends, or pretty much cover anyone for that matter. So he's looking like he's going to be pretty chalky. Love to get a take from you guys whether you think it's good or bad chalk.
I'm probably going to be off him. It's just one of those things where it's tough not to see like the play volume. He's less than 50% of the dropbacks, way less than 50% of the dropbacks this year. So I think he's not involved enough in his offense, and I'd rather grab like a Auden Tate for a similar price there than punting at tight end.
The only problem for me is there's no clear-cut tight end this week, right?
Like, they're both kind of seeing around like 45, 50. Like they're CJ Uzoma and him are both seeing around 45% of the snaps. So I mean, I wish he was seeing 70+%, but I'm probably not going to have a ton of Tyler Eifert either. He's a touchdown or bust guy, and I mean, he could easily not catch touchdown. I don't know. You saw him drop that touchdown last game. Like Andy Dalton actually put it on him, and he just dropped it. Like it was in his hands, and he dropped. Like Tyler Eifert doesn't look very good. I mean, it's the matchup play, but
yeah, it's more of an ownership. More of an ownership fade for me.
All right. Are you guys interested in Mark Andrews?
Yes, for sure, Mark Andrews, and I think the questionable tag helps out. A lot of these 50-50 tags, like I'm fine with buying in there. This is a spot where we haven't talked about Lamar Jackson or this game in general. And I mean, I feel pretty good about what I like in this game. So definitely have a game stack here, and it will most likely be a Mark Andrews and a Lamar stack. So yeah, I definitely like that for lowish tight end ownership here.
Yeah, one thing I don't like about Andrews is they were very clear about I think he had 29 snaps, and like they pretty much were giving their hand away. Like he wasn't in there for a ton of the snaps, and he ran a bunch of passing routes on most of those snaps. I think it was close. It was 22 or 29 or something like that, but they were making it clear that when he was on the field, they were pretty much throwing the ball most of the time, which I think defenses are going to kind of catch on to. So I hope they get him out there a little bit more and use him a little more. I know his foot, he probably has his foot injury is obviously a serious one where they don't want to overload him too much, but good defenses will catch on to that eventually. I think the Steelers D is pretty solid. And, I just don't love him if they're going to continue to only run him out there for, half the snaps or 40% of the snaps, whatever it is. And they're already tipping their hand about, when he's on the field, they're going to throw the ball.
All right. Who's your favorite tight end?
I think Darren Waller would be the guy. If I'm paying up for someone, I think I like Darren Waller a good amount in Chicago. I think they're going to struggle with those outside receivers. Williams, Foot, they're hopeful he plays, the coach said. They hope he responds well to treatment, but still, I think Darren Waller is going to see a ton of targets in this game. I like him at 5K on DraftKings. So I think he'd be the number one guy if I had to pay up for one guy. Cheap guy on DK at 2,800. I think Noah Fant is in play. Yeah. And those are two of the guys that I'm interested in. Nothing wrong with Austin Hooper for Atlanta, but I think those are the two guys I'm going to have most of my ownership in.
Right. And you got to love Darren Waller's production. Or I should say targets percentage of the offense. Talk about a guy that's going to get some touchdown progression. It's him. The guy's had 37 targets and no touchdowns.
He ran so bad last week because they used those gimmick plays and they got up. They ran out to a huge lead off of some guys that we even heard of before. All right. Let's finish the show with our favorite stacks. Do you have a favorite stack, KillaB?
Yeah, again, the popular stacks going to be in the Houston, Atlanta. That seems a little easy. So I'll go. We didn't really talk about it too much, but Marquise Brown too. I want to have some ownership, and I feel pretty decent about different Steelers. It's the funny thing is Vance McDonald's questionable. Kind of want to know injuries before I kind of throw this out there. And Juju Smith has been hurt, but I think that's a spot where it's kind of sneaky. Bringing it back with a James Conner if he goes again. He's hurt. Jalen Samuels, but LJ to Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews are really.
Yeah, me and Kirk were both Cincinnati, Arizona. I don't think that's necessarily sneaky, but I think a lower owned stack that I'm going to throw out there is the Minnesota Giants game. think it's very easy to stack up 2 because you can just bring it back with Golden Tate because he's super cheap on most sites. So, playing Diggs, Thielen, Cousins with Tate, bringing it back, or doing, like I said, if you don't trust Cousins that much, play one of the 2 receivers. My lean's Thielen, but Diggs is fine too. And then play it with Dalvin Cook and bring it back Golden Tate. Like, there's ways you can do this where you don't have to play Kirk Cousins, but I think that's a really interesting tournament stack, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone hit a big score with that stack.
Yep, you took that from me. I like it too because I started to like it more the more you talked about it on the show. I'm just going to be simple and chalk it up here and say that I'm really giving serious consideration to just going absolutely all in on the Cincy Arizona game. And if that beats me, never playing anyone from their teams ever again. Okay, so that's honestly.
Listen, if Kyler Murray can't do it against Cincinnati, just everyone who's a Kyler Murray truther needs to admit that they're wrong.
All right, that wraps up the show. Hope you guys have a good week. Have fun on your bachelor party. KillaB, JSU. I'll be talking to you. You're around, just a little down the street from me, and let's make some money this week, boys. Let's come back strong after a disappointing week last week. So, all right, this is the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you.